A busy, busy week ahead for the Athens Rock Lobsters, a period of 6 games in 7 days. Lots to talk about, including the recently ended trade deadline, a mixed bag in Michigan, and of course, what's to come for the team. As always, it's Matteen Rad joined by Steve Martinson on our Coach's Corner. Coach Marty, we got a little bit of everything this past weekend in Michigan, a bit of good, a bit of bad, and a lot of action. How did you
Yeah, the good, the
evaluate?
bad, and the ugly. Let's just call it what it is: the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know,
How did you evaluate it?
frustrating weekend. Well, I thought there's a lot of things. Our power play wasn't a good power play. I thought we took a lot of bad choices for shots, and then, for some reason, we try to score on the odd man rush on the power play, but multiple times we tried to go in and make a play on a 3-on-3, instead of curling back and setting up. So I thought our power play was brain dead, and they asked about practicing today. I just said I'm just going to roll the lines because we don't do what we practice anyway. So that's on my list. And then I thought we had one soft goal in each loss. I thought their winning goal was a tough one to watch, and then they have one bad goal, and then like I said, we're getting all kinds of opportunities, but we're just not finishing, which has kind of been our trademark. All but one game that we played this year that we lost were games that we had lots of shots. So again, we're two things going there. We trying to look at bringing in some guys that maybe have a history of scoring a little bit more and making it a little bit more competitive around here. That's number one. We're making it more competitive.
Friday saw the debut of 3 new defensemen. Timur Gavrilovich, who has been moved at the deadline for Avery Smith. We'll talk more about that later. But Adam Oja and Kyle Powell, what did you make of their first few games as a Rock Lobster? And did having new guys, bulk up so much of your defensive pairs, do you think that played a part in the performances?
Well, I mean, I like the way our defense, I like the way they moved the puck and fit in. And that, it was nice to get some left rights in there a little bit that, you know, we're still going to go with the 6 top defensemen, but it's nice to go with some left rights and get that into the equation. Obviously, getting some size. Tamir doesn't really use his size, but he's not here anymore. I thought the other guys were physical and had some good hits, and they moved well, and so yeah, that they're going to be a plus.
There's a huge scrum towards the end of that game against the Rockers. I do think the intentions of the referees were in the right place, but I do think it highlighted how sometimes referees intervening can do more harm than good. Joe Colatarsi gets into it with Avery Smith, but Joe gets tied up by the referee, and that just leaves Cola a target to be wailed on, and he can't fire back. What's your take on how referees manage those kinds of situations? And do you think that there are moments where their involvement can actually create more problems for the players involved?
Well, you can't come in and grab one player. You just can't do that. And then, the other guy that they grab Joey, and then they grab Powell. And so, and then the other thing is when there's a scrum, if there's a fight, it's just something that I discussed with the officiating, you're supposed to separate the players and get them out of there. And I think we haven't been doing it. We got to get a little bit better at getting the players separated, which kind of alleviates the second scrum. Now, in that situation, that second scrum was coming right away. I think, Smith came in because Joey, I think, was a little bit bigger than the guy that hit Joey from behind, but Joey just defending himself turned and, went after the guy that ran him from behind, and he left his feet. And, that ended up, we ended up with a suspension, and, that was a factor, I thought, in the next game is losing Phil. So, right now we're going to be bigger. We're getting just those guys, and obviously the big, the difference in that scrum is now we have Smith, and Smith's a big guy, 6'3", 225 pounds. And the problem with the referee trying to grab a guy like that is, he couldn't hold on to him. And, and then they called it completely, they ended up with a power play, which, I got to watch what I say but it was really, really frustrating to have them start that stuff and then us get a 5-minute power play, which cost the goalie a shutout. So I was pretty frustrated with it all in all, but I thought we played good, and I thought we played a really good game on Friday night. And then, the reality of the next 2 games, those guys are Port Huron are playing hard, and they're playing they're playing for, they're playing it, for playoffs. And we got guys that just didn't match their intensity. And so I thought that was the big difference, really in the weekend. And some of the goals that we had scored on were guys were taking shortcuts. Our penalty kill on the winning goal was terrible. We had forward outside of their power play. Uh, on the winning goal on Sunday, we had a forward go behind the net when, go behind. You'll see in a game a player will go for a skate sometimes, go into an easy area, and so we had a bad change, and it ended up being 5-on-4, and Rosie played it wrong, and by the time the guy shot the puck, Rosie was like a 5'5" goalie. He'd come out and was real small. So, my grandmother could have put that one in. It was there was so much open net. So that was frustrating to see the game-winning goal. And again, I'm throwing a lot of stuff out. We had some guys playing hard, not everybody, but I didn't think we had everybody in the fight, and we needed everybody in it. And I thought, the big difference from Port Huron is, they had everybody in it.
Why don't we go ahead and talk about Avery Smith? We've already mentioned him a couple times. Not too long ago, there was a situation where we played the Dashers, and you saw Bodan Zinchenko, and then he traded for and brought into the organization. Is that what happened with Avery? And what about him made him an interesting acquisition?
Well, a couple things. I'd looked him up, and I watched shifts of him before we played, so I was watching them, and we'd already discussed some things. And then after the game, I made a deal. I made them a deal they couldn't refuse. Really, is what I did. I just said, okay, what are we really missing on our third line? And I don't like I don't like to say what line is which, but I thought we're missing size up front, and we've lost Murray on the blue line. Now we've replaced Murray as a big guy, but we didn't replace Portillo. We had other kind of small forwards in the lineup that we just had a lot of small forwards, and we weren't, it wasn't a heavy line, and then it wasn't scoring. So, I looked at, okay, this is a no brainer. And I was looking like right now the roster as it stands, we're allowed to bring juniors in and college guys, and they don't count against the point system or the roster or the salary cap. So, and then you have to play 15 games pro. So I'm not looking at any pro I brought in. Let's say if a guy was waived, let's say somebody has to waive a guy because of a roster limit or whatever. I'm not looking to add any pros. They have to play 15 games. I don't have to remove anybody from the lineup, or excuse me, I do from the lineup, but not from the roster to bring in these college guys now. So I was actually looking for a guy like that for Avery, but when he became available, like I said, he's a big, strong, tough guy, and he's just really what we've been missing from our lineup as of late.
I want to be careful on how I ask this question. We saw him drop the gloves with our guys on Friday night. Let me just say, I know the philosophy around fighting in hockey. I know that the guys don't look at it the same way. And I know at the end of the day, we're talking about professionals playing a professional game. With all that being said, is there any risk when we see these kinds of moves that there are still hard feelings between the guys who played parts in these tussles?
Joey probably would have liked to gone up and punch him in practice, but that's just part of, I've literally had I've had lunch with friends that were roommates of mine, now on opposing teams, and had lunch and fought it with them at night in the game. Everybody understands what the game is. And our guys, especially vet guys, know what we've been missing lately. And I'm sure Joey secretly would probably like to give him a crack, but he likes having him in the lineup. And really, that's the end of it.
Towards the end of that Friday night game, we see the Rockers roll the dice and empty the net. Josh Rosenzweig gets the puck from the trapezoid and starts aiming for the rare goalie goal. Fantastic effort, goes off the post, turns into a secondary assist. I know the philosophy probably changes on that attempt if it were just a one-goal game at the time, but you were up by a couple. How much do you enjoy seeing players like Rosie take those risks, and do you think it highlights how one of Rosie's big strengths is with the puck?
Well, that would have been nice, especially because he lost the shutout on the power play. It would have been nice to get that, because I just, if they don't get the power play, they're not scoring a goal. And so it would have been nice that, that's the last I thought about it. Right now I'm looking at really what we need to do to give us the best chance to win every night. So you're asking about those things. It would have been nice time to move on, but it would have been nice for him to get that, certainly, for sure.
Well, Rosie has been giving us a good chance as of late. He now finds himself in the top 3 in the FPHL in both goals against average and save percentage. He's the youngest guy on this team now after Reller's been moved, and it feels like he's finding new levels all the time. In your mind, what has contributed to Rosie's climb towards being one of the league's best?
Well, he's got a lot of natural talent. He's quick, and he's got good size, and he's got all the ability, all the athletic ability to be a top goalie. And part of it is just being serious and put his mind and make sure that he gives himself the best chance to be, all that he can be, whether it's in practice or in a game.
We talked about a little bit about the games in Port Huron, and we talked about Phil's suspension. You mentioned that you thought it played a part in the result the next night. We know that you missed Phil the next night, but what exactly about Phil's game do you think you were missing on Saturday?
Well, he's one of our top players. He's always at the top of he's always at the top and making plays and hitting. You take his hitting out, and then the next night, we lose Malik right away. So that line was messed up. Now, is that the reason you lose? No. I mean, it has a factor in us not playing our A game, but it's also opportunity for other guys that didn't seize it. And, one of the reasons, I mean, if somebody maybe, I just didn't see other guys step up and fill the slot for Phil. And it was opportunity for guys to do that. And we didn't do it. And so I've got another forward that's in town. He had to go back. He has to fly back tomorrow night to take a police academy test, but he's a top leading scorer from Division III team. He's the leading scorer, led the team a couple years at a season high 17 goals. So, like I said, we get Bo back and it's going to get real competitive around here. And if you do some of the things that guys did this weekend, you're going to find yourself either watching on the bench or watching from the stands.
What about the shootout, too? I mean, Phil's been your go-to shootout guy as of late. Did having him not in the shootout available shooters that play a part as well?
Well, I mean, again, it does in that he's good in the shootout, but we got plenty of guys that are good in the shootout. When you look at our lineup and their lineup, I mean, our top skill, we just didn't score. I mean, you hate to it's tough when you go to a shootout because you're putting the whole game on just a couple of shooters. And I was against this. It favors us because we've got some high skill guys, but I thought fans would have liked to see other players get an opportunity to go in a shootout. So it's unfortunate when it gets to that point and we don't, bury it. And we had a power play in overtime and didn't, the other night and didn't finish. So it's frustrating when that stuff happens.
I know some things, especially things said, need to be left out on the ice, but there were fights, whether verbal or physical, everywhere in the rink against Port Huron, on the ice, in the penalty boxes, and even between the benches. Can you tell us your thoughts on how contentious that series got between the two teams?
Well, so I give those guys credit. So what the league has been allowing, and in my understanding is they're gonna crack down on this now. But the league has been allowing slashing all season, and I've been complaining about it all year. You're not supposed to be able to slash people in the hands and in the arms, and you're not even supposed to be able to slash hard in the stick. I can see that if they let a little bit of stick slashing go, but we've been allowed to slash virtually. I mean, you look at the play that it was we were on the power play and Milan came around the net and it was I believe the second period. He came around the net. They slashed him twice in the hand. He came up to the top of the up by our blue line and they slashed him 3 times in the hand. Now I'm telling you right now, Port Huron they're targeting the guy's hands because they know they're not calling it. And so one of the things that set things off is I just told our guys to start trying to break their fingers and start with Graham. He's the player coach and he's their top player. And I was just like, okay, if you're going to do this, and they were messing around with Milan. And it was funny because it was their assistant coach, 21, who ended up just getting ragdolled by Carter. And now I'm not saying he's not tough because Carter ragdolled him, but if you're going to do all the talking that he did, you should be able to back it up a little bit. And I don't even think he tried to throw a punch with him, and that whole play, that ends up being the game-winning goal power play for them. And they called us for too many men on the ice. And I'm like, I mean, I'm so frustrated at how they can say, okay, what did he do? Did he pull the guy off the bench? if he pulled the guy off the bench, then then they get a guy for leaving the bench. But there's no discussion between the four referees. Now, wait a minute. They were on a 4-on-3 power play. There was 7 guys over here, 2 guys fighting, so that doesn't equate to one team having too many men on the ice. And that was about all I could take. I'm lucky I didn't get a game misconduct because I just anyway, it was really, really frustrating. And then of course, we on our power play right before that, and I said, I hope this doesn't come back to bite us, but we were super selfish and just brain dead on our power play and not doing anything that we worked on or we try to do. And of course we didn't score. And that was the difference. I mean, I thought the special teams was certainly the difference on Saturday and Sunday night.
There's been this theme as of late of, guys taking knocks, being day to day, and then going and playing these really physical games. We saw 3 in Michigan this last weekend. Does that make the 3-game set against the Monroe Moccasins, who have been, I don't want to go and say the word dirty, but it's hard to not bring that word out of my mouth.
Well,
Like,
what else are you going to call it? They do a lot of dumb stuff, and a lot of it doesn't get called. Which is frustrating. But hey, one of the reasons I bought Kyle Powell is tougher than anybody on their team, and so is Smith, and these guys play a regular shift. So the guys that they have that are their big tough guys don't play very much. One of them hardly plays at all, and if he does, he takes bad penalties. And these guys will be playing a regular shift. So, we went back to where we were with Monroe before, where we've got the bodies now to back up, and play a game that if we need to play it. Now, on the flip side, they need to win out. They need to get 3-point games every night. So, they got to come into our rink and hope to keep their season going because we can end their season. And, that's not something that we would be opposed to.
talking once again about how busy we'll be in this next week, and this will be my last question. What do you hope to learn about your team in this last month of the regular season, especially this week where you have 6 games in 7 days?
Well, I don't know if it's what do I need to learn. I mean, I know what everybody play. I know what everybody's got now, and so you'll see some players in the playoffs that maybe will step up and elevate their game, and they're just playoff guys. But ultimately, what I'm looking for, I don't look for anybody to do anything that they're not capable of. Or let's say, I expect guys to be on their A game every shift. So I expect people not to really be above, where you say, okay, well, I've had an outstanding game. If we have everybody on their A game, then we're going to be fine. We didn't have that this weekend. I mean, we had some key guys that were just kind of passengers, and that I thought was the difference of the game. Now, the difference is now, starting this week when we get another defenseman coming in tonight, and the other forward is going to be back after the weekend. So we'll have extra bodies. So if you're not playing the way I know you're capable of playing, like I said, you can either watch in the middle of the bench or you can watch in the stands. But at this point, everybody here knows what we expect. We expect guys to play their A game, go to the net, make plays, get pucks in deep. But like I said, our back pressure and our changing wasn't good. Our positioning, I don't think, wasn't good. And then, I don't push guys to be as physical on the road outside of our division if we don't have to be. And so now we're back in our division, and all these teams that we're playing, until we play Binghamton, are all jockeying for either playoff spots, or to make the playoffs. So these are money games for everybody. And if you can't step up in the money game now, there's no way I'm going to think that you're going to do it in the playoffs. And like I said, we can have up to 5 amateurs at any time on our roster now. They don't count. So, I'll keep the phones, I'll keep answering the phones and looking for guys if I think we need to get a little bit better. And the other thing is what people don't realize, or, maybe they miss, is when you're at the top of the league, you have loyalty to the guys that got you there. Sometimes it's one team that gets you to where you are now, and it's another team that gets you to the next spot you want to be in the playoffs. Because one thing that's happening, and you look like a team at Monroe, and I don't know how they're doing it, but they've got, I don't know, like 30 players there. They got unlimited, it seems, PTOs. But what the teams are lower in the standings, they're always looking to get better. So a lot of times they're getting better as you may be staying the same, and you're hoping that everybody kind of improves their game over the season. But sometimes that's what I'm saying is sometimes the team that got you to where you are in the regular season isn't, you need more for the playoffs. And that's one of the things that I'm looking at based on the effort that I got from everybody this last weekend.